cue the mariachi band, your nachos, your tacos, and let's stitch it up and have a good time. This is season 7, episode 39. It's our 2025 Mexico GP review show. You have found the Outlap F1 podcast, and you've got Andy. I'm joined as always by my wonderful cohort in all of this, Mr. Cody. It is good to see you, sir. We did get a chance to see each other Sunday. We were doing mini rants then, but I imagine this is going to be a lot more fun. But how's it hanging? Been hanging since then?
It's been hanging pretty well. It could be hanging about 3 points better, but it's been going well. Nice weekend, a fantastic Mexico Grand Prix, considering some of the ones we've had in the past. Yeah, it's been a trip, and it was really nice to, not that I dislike going to the track. Going to the U.S. Grand Prix is fantastic, but it was a little nice to, after sitting in the Texas sun for a little while, getting to sit on my nice comfy couch and watch this race.
Yeah, I was thinking as I was getting out of my car to walk in to get ready and all set up, I'm like, oh, I should probably put the hoodie on. And I'm like, do you realize 2 weeks ago I would be caught dead in this right now because there'd be no way in hell I would have anything to do with a hoodie. But how it's all changed, where you are in the world, and the dates, they matter. But anyway, we'll get into all of the weather that really wasn't a factor. But we're going to get into the Mexico GP in just a minute. But as always, if you have found our show, welcome along. We are glad you are here. You can find us on X, on Instagram. We post sometimes the Discord, the Reddit, but always pretty much here on YouTube at Outlap F1 Podcast is the handle for all of that. If you enjoy what you're watching and you enjoy what you're listening, if you want to do us a solid, you can click a like or a subscribe button on YouTube, or if you're on your favorite podcasting app, we're on all the big ones, but especially Apple Podcasts, Spotify. If you want to leave us a 5-star review, if you like us that much, we would be most appreciative of that, because that helps us come up a little bit better in content like this, talking about racing and talking about people that go around on a racetrack on Sundays. If you would like to email us and send your thoughts directly to us, outlapf1@gmail.com is the way to do that. Thank you so much to the people who continue to support this show. Can't say enough about these fine folks. Thanks so much to Dean Warwick, Yuri Dolchester, Paul Weaver, Quentin Warden, Kevin Kelly, Megan Stanzik, Timothy Brown, and of course, Jonathan Scott. If you would like to join that esteemed list, there's a link in our show notes to our Anchor page. It does ask for a monetary donation. Do you have to do one? No, of course not. But if you wanted to, we would definitely appreciate it. It would all go into making the show a little bit better, keeping our technology relevant in this ever-changing atmosphere. All right. Well, we shall start with our headlines of the day. Cody, I'll let you go first. What you got?
My headline of the day is that we were one virtual safety car that should not have been, in my humble opinion, away from the best Mexico City Grand Prix that we've had to date. I'll be honest, I went into this weekend thinking it was going to be another snooze fest. And in some respects, you could argue that it was. Lando Norris completely ran away with this one, finished way up the road from everyone else, led every lap, was never in doubt that he was going to win, and he qualified way out in front of everybody else. So we had a little preview of what was to come. However, everything outside of first place was to fight for. It was very exciting from lap 1, which was extremely hectic. And yeah, it could have been just that little bit better, but we had that robbed from us.
Well, we're definitely going to discuss that. The last couple laps could have been crazy. They were crazy in their own way, but we will talk about what happened, what maybe should have happened, what shouldn't have happened. And there were a couple other instances of weird things happening on the track and weird people being on the track when you would not expect them to be. So we will get into all of that. But my headline is, after 4 races where it just felt that my team was literally wandering in the desert and not able to put anything together, I watched FP3. Lando Norris goes out on the soft tires. He goes through sector 1, and this is what I thought to myself.
Happy learned how to cut. Uh-oh.
Lando Norris figured out sector 1, which was the bugaboo sector for all of, it seemed like, the Friday running. And frankly, then he put together all the rest of the sectors and put together what was, in my opinion, a championship level drive right when he needed it most. And he, because of that, takes over the lead in the drivers, but nothing is done for yet. It's 3 guys. They're still all in it. Max actually creeps up in a weird way net at the end of the day. But it was a Lando weekend like I always say, like, you got to ride the roller coaster with this guy because this is what he's capable of. He's totally capable of doing this. And it was just after turn 1, he was gone. And that was the last you saw of him. And you didn't see him basically until the end of the race. But then what was going on behind him? Oh, we're going to have some fun discussions about that in just a little bit. But we shall start, as we are always apt to do, with our qualifying recap. And that saw, all right, going out in P20. Feels like this is kind of the beginning of the end for this poor gentleman. I know he's got a big following, but his team boss basically gave the wave of, I don't really know that I like this anymore. That was Franco Calapinto. P19, I don't know why sometimes this guy still drives a car. It's really quite astonishing. Lance Stroll and the Aston Martin was basically nowhere. P18, the other Alpine, Pierre Gasly, they were in the, as Rachel Fleming will probably say later, the Alpine this week. P17 was Alex Albon and the Williams with a team that you just kind of really felt sorry for because when they're on, they're great, but when they have weekends like this, it's really bad. Brake issues all the way. Not quite advancing out of Q1 was Gabriel Bortoletto in the Kick Sauber. Advancing through to Q2, P15 was Liam Lawson. P14 was Fernando Alonso. P13, Nico Hulkenberg. P12, Esteban Ocon. P11, Yuki Tsunoda. And P10, Ali Behrman. Your top 10 from 10 to 1. P10, I'm sorry, I must have missed a place. 13 was Hulkenberg, 12 was Ocon, 11 Tsunoda, 10 Behrman. P9 was Isaac Hadjar, P8 Oscar Piastri, P7, well, we got to talk about Oscar Piastri being down in P8. That was a surprise. Or maybe it wasn't given the current form. I don't know. We'll discuss in a minute. P7, Carlos Sainz showing well early for Williams in the qualifying. Good for him. However, he had to take that 5-place grid drop, so that kind of ended the momentum there. P6 was Kimi Antonelli. P5, we will talk about the frustrations, I'm sure, of one Max Verstappen, only good enough for P5 in quali. P4 was George Russell. P3, bringing the Ferrari form back and looking like he had a chance at something kind of special here. That was Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari. P2, only to be bested by his teammate, Charles Leclerc, in the other Ferrari. But even though he gave Lando a scare, it turns out not to be anything in the end. Lando Norris sticks it on pole, a 1:15.586, the lap time. All right. Cody, sir, big thoughts here in the qualifying.
There's a lot of big things here. I think the biggest thing is that Lando Norris was a full quarter second out in front of everybody else during qualifying. This definitely was foreboding for things to come. He was looking very dominant, especially compared to his teammate Oscar Piastri, who we know has struggled in probably pretty much the last 4 races, really. And Oscar Piastri was all the way down in 8th. I also thought this might be the beginning of the end for Max Verstappen because, as we've discussed before, Max has a chance, but he really, really has to be on top of his game, pretty much winning every race from here on out. And qualifying 5th is nowhere close to that. And he was a full over half second off of Lando Norris. So I thought, man, this is where it ends. We'll see that isn't quite how everything went down. But yeah, definitely quite the discrepancy here between the two McLaren teammates and Max Verstappen sandwiched right in the middle of them.
Yeah, I mean, tough grip levels, I think, was the theme throughout most of qualifying. And they all went out on the C5 tires, and that was, just barely enough, it seemed, for some to be able to get to grips with a track that wasn't giving it, but anybody really any grip. It was very dusty throughout the entirety of the weekend, including all the way to Sunday. I mean, usually you get to the Sunday running, you generally clean the track up from the non-use, but that wasn't the case. We'll definitely talk about the amount of the dust cloud that came up in turn 1 when we get to Sunday. But yeah, I mean, for Oscar Piastri, it seemed like he was nowhere. Couldn't get anywhere near his teammate. I said in the headline, Lando figured out sector 1. Oscar really didn't figure out sector 1. His sector 1 was 2 3/10 behind. He'd have an okay sector 2. That was probably where the McLaren car was its best. And then sometimes an average to sometimes decent sector 3, but it wasn't never going to be enough. He did evolve throughout the 3 sessions. He didn't get caught out in Q1 like we've seen McLaren cars happen here in the last couple of years. So from that perspective, it was good, but P8 was nowhere near where he wanted to be for sure. In terms of Max's lap, I think it was telling that when after Friday, he went back to Yuki Tsunoda's spec of rear wing. That was something that they ended up doing. So they had brought some additional updates to try to, again, they're trying to. Red Bull is still on full development push. I don't think they're done yet. They're kind of throwing all their chips into the season and seeing where it shakes out at the end of the day. And the fact that Max ended up going back to a previous spec of rear wing was kind of telling that he never could really come to grips in the way that he would want to drive the car. And this has been a Max hallowed hall of, race wins in his career. So it's not like he forgot how to get around the track. Yeah, 5 wins out of the 10 times we've been here. That's really good. Last I checked. Other notable mentions, I have to give a shout out to both the Ferraris for a team that sometimes we've always kind of counted dead out and forget about it. This has been a bit of a resurgence, especially in the last 2 Grand Prix, from Circuit of the Americas in Austin to here in Mexico. Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton, and the fact that Hamilton only, I think, a 10th off of his teammate was encouraging, at least for the Saturday running. On the other end of the spectrum, Franco Colapinto and Lance Stroll, oh my God, what are you doing? You basically end up almost a full second off of, P1 in Q1. So usually this is an extremely tight qualifying. Lando kind of put it out there. The rest, other than Lando, it was very tight. Could be just a 10th or 2 could bring you up 4 or 5 places. George Russell put in a lap right at the end to basically come in front of a Max right at the end there and finishes P4. Yeah, a lot to play for. It looked like a very spicy grid heading into Sunday. And we will definitely talk about turn 1, but we shall start, as we are apt to do, with our back markers. And that saw 3 non-classified finishers, Liam Lawson in the Racing Bull, Nico Hulkenberg in the Kick Sauber, who had engine trouble from the beginning. The fact that he managed to make 25 laps is a bit of a surprise, given the fact that even on the formation lap, he was complaining of no power. Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin, not really a data to think about, but boy, did he have some fun radio. We are going to talk about that especially when we get to the fan email segment. We've got somebody who always follows Fernando's radio, and I would suggest that you go find Fernando's radio because it was hilarious. The classified finishers start with P17 Carlos Sainz playing a big role, especially at the end. We'll probably talk about this first and foremost. P16 was Franco Colapinto, P15 Pierre Gasly, P14 Lance Stroll, who had a spin on lap 1, and that was basically the end of any threat he had. And P13 was Isaac Hadjar. All right, Cody, where would you like to start with the back markers?
Oh man, we've got 2 drivers here that were involved in the FIA bullshittery that we saw this weekend. First one I think I want to start with is Liam Lawson, because this was probably the more egregious of the FIA bullshittery. Liam Lawson had issues pretty much right at the beginning of the race. Ended up coming into the pits right away to have a front wing replaced, which put him significantly off from the rest of the grid. And while he was coming around, I believe this was after the wing change and after he'd already had that massive belt to everyone else. Stewards decided that they were going to go ahead and run out onto the track and clear off some debris. And they must have missed the memo that Liam Lawson was no longer with the rest of the pack, because a couple of poor marshals out there could have potentially been in serious danger from Liam Lawson coming around on the track, who, based on footage that they did not show during the broadcast, mind you, I didn't find out about this till later, just how close Liam Lawson came to these marshals. And I totally agree with his radio message that he could have potentially injured or killed these marshals if things had gone just a little bit differently.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some analysis on it, and what happened was there was a assumption that the rest of the pack had gone by, and the marshal message was double yellow in sector 1 to clear the track. They then, race control realizes Lawson's now coming out of the pits, and then rescinded, according to the official clerk of the course, transcript that you can get and look at, rescinds the message to the marshals to be out on the track. Now, in somewhere in that, the radio either went dead, or they didn't hear it, or it never got communicated to the guys actually running out on the track, because they thought they were running out on a pretty clear track and figured they had at least 30 to 45 seconds to do what they needed to do and then get off. That clearly did not happen. They were still in the midst of picking up debris from the crazy turn one, which we're going to talk about in just a little bit because it's Mexico and the turn one is always a little crazy. That's what you tune in for, is the first turn, because it's 4 wide going into it, and that all was to play for here. But in the aftermath of that, here comes Liam Lawson, and his radio message was absolutely correct. He could have fucking killed them. And he was right to say that. And the fact that it didn't get shown until much, much, much later is kind of telling. I mean, this is how, we're only a few years out from marshals getting hit at the Canadian Grand Prix, and a couple of them, one of them I think did pass away because of that. I think it was 2013, 14 or something like that. It was not a very widely reported story, but it did happen. But, the FIA's got their official stance is they're going to do their investigation. Well, they better investigate pretty damn quick, because you cannot have this. This is a non-starter. When we were at COTA, we actually had a track marshal literally like right in front of us. So I actually watched a lot of what he did, and he's on the radio all the time. So I don't know if it was a radio channel thing. Now, there was some radio transmission difficulty earlier in the weekend, with related to the GPS, with related to the onboards, all sorts of weird things. The Sky feed was screwed up. The F1 TV feed was messed up, and they couldn't fix it in FP1, but it looked like they had gotten everything settled by the time of the race for sure. So I don't know exactly what happened, but somebody screwed up somewhere, because that cannot happen.
Yeah, safety is paramount. It should be paramount, and you can never go on assumptions when it comes to that. So they should have never given the marshals the clear to go on track until they had verified where everyone was on track. In my opinion, and I'm not in the room. I don't know how the order of everything that goes down, but to me, it would make sense that before you tell anyone they can go out on the track on an active race, that you should check where everyone is on track before you make that call. You'd see, Liam Lawson's off the pace. He's going in the pits or something like that. Hold off for a lap or two. And that's all you had to do.
Right.
And if there was radio communication issues, they should have had some kind of fail safe in place.
Yep.
Like, hey, we need a verbal confirmation back from you, or we need a second command or something,
right,
before you actually go out onto an active race course.
Yeah.
There's better ways that they can do this. You never want to see anyone get hurt, and I really hope that they do a thorough investigation on them.
Yeah, I mean, it's shades of the Jules Bianchi incident, because that's exactly what happened. It was a double wave yellow that he either didn't see or didn't know was there, and could not stop. And then it was just a tragic consequence of that whole situation. That's the reason we have the virtual safety car, is to prevent exactly what was happening from happening. So like that to me would have been the right thing. As soon as you see he's back out on the track, you throw the VSC, that slows everybody down. Everybody's much more aware. You get those marshals off the track, or you now find a good window to put them back on the track. And then, you clear up the debris as best you can, and then we can go along and be racing again. But yeah, it was a very, very scary incident. And I count ourselves lucky that we didn't have worse consequences there. Anything else?
Speaking of VSCs.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Oh, you want to talk about the final one?
I was just going to move right on to
let's do it.
Mega frustration of the weekend. Yeah, speaking of VSCs, we should have had a VSC at that spot. We maybe shouldn't have had a VSC for Carlos Sainz, who we see here. Technically classified as 17th, but he did retire from the race. And it was very awful timing, because Carlos Sainz happened to spin around and smack the wall and break his suspension right as the race was reaching its climax. In the last couple laps, we had two battles of great importance, great significance going on. We had Max Verstappen just finally catching up to Charles Leclerc on soft tires, potentially fighting
on what was an amazing run. An amazing soft tire run. I've seen it summarized. It's unreal. Only Max and maybe a couple others are able to do that.
I was so ready to see that too, because Leclerc also has fantastic racecraft, and I'm sure would have loved to finish second, as he ended up doing. But I was waiting to see that fight and see how that played out over a couple laps, because it would have been epic. On top of that, you had Oscar Piastri trying to maintain his championship lead by passing Oliver Behrman at the very end of the race, which would have put him, I believe, gained 2 points, would have put him 1 point in front of Lando Norris.
Yep.
at the end of this race. Both those fights coming into play, Carlos Sainz spins around, hits the wall, breaks his suspension. And, I anticipate just wanting to keep things moving. He's right by an exit area. He pulls his car as best he can into that exit area. Well off the racing line, really kind of in a place where, unless something absolutely bonkers happened, you realistically wouldn't have any cars crashing into that area. There's a bit of a delay. They had yellow flags waved for that area. And after a bit of a delay, they finally did call a virtual safety car, which brought all of that action to a grinding halt. They ended up calling the VSC off right at the end with like half a lap left, but didn't really matter because the main passing zone at this race course is down the main straight. That area had already passed under the VSC, so Max missed his best chance to get a good run on Leclerc. Ended up not being able to pass him. Oscar also had his pass on Oliver Behrman, his hopeful pass neutralized as well. So we have to leave those points where they lay. And you were telling me before we started here that per the letter of the law of the rules, that what they did, calling the VSC, was really the best decision. And if it has to do with marshals being on the track, I can understand that because we saw at the very beginning of the race
Right.
that you really want things to be under control when marshals are out on the track. But the fact that Carlos Sainz had moved his car almost completely out of the firing line, I don't think the marshals really would have done a whole lot more other than push his car maybe that little extra bit or something. The fact that you called a VSC here in a much more safe situation, right at the peak of all the action, leaves a sour taste in my mouth. I guess Carlos Sainz, it's not his fault. He had a spin. Williams was having issues all weekend. It's the same thing as some other races we've seen in the past that shall not be named, like Abu Dhabi. But
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
not his fault.
it's not quite
but
that egregious, but yeah, I mean, this one was actually, I think, pretty much it was a tough call, and it's a tough call because what Sainz was trying to do, Sainz was trying to respect the race. Sainz is trying to get off. He realized how many laps there were to go, and he's trying to get his car off, and he gets it to where it's like 3/4 of the way into a safe zone, and it is really his ass end that's sticking out. And you would think that, okay, he's probably close enough to where if he just stays in the car, they can finish the race. Maybe they rescind the double yellow and then we can deal with it after that. Now, what I saw from his onboard doesn't do it justice because what was actually starting to happen was the rear of the car, I think one of his brakes caught on fire. And I think that's why the marshals were dispersed to deal with a smoking car. So once that happens, the VSC call, as much as I hate to say this, becomes an automatic thing. Like it's marshal on track. That should be the VSC. Now, why that didn't happen earlier, I cannot explain that. That's the thing that they have to get right. But it should be once fire is said, marshal needs to deal with fire in whatever form. We have to call the virtual safety car in that regard. Yeah, it sucked for the timing. I was not a fan of it because I'm looking at it like the first time when I just saw Carlos Sainz's onboard. I think when I saw you later on Sunday, I said, you have every right to be pissed off because I saw it that way. And I'm like, okay, I have to go take a look at this. I have to see what's going on from different perspectives. And when they did, when I watched the analysis of what was actually happening, there are two marshals standing at the back of that safety zone, which is almost, if not on the track, they are on the track. So it was shitty timing. It sucks. Like I got it. Like as a fan, I wanted to watch Max and Charles go at it. I was all there for that. And I saw the yellow flag come out. I'm like, who's not moving? And I'm looking up and down timing going, who's still setting sectors and what's going on? Because you couldn't tell. And by the time the feed catches up with it, you really didn't know what was going on. And I hear Carlos Sainz in the stadium section. I'm like, well, shoot, that's going to take away. And on the first time they all went by, it took away half the DRS. And like about halfway up the straight, all of a sudden, Max opens his DRS on Charles and he's trying to get the slipstream going. And it just wasn't going to be enough because you really needed the full windup of, the coming out of the last part of the Peraltada corner and going down that straight and getting into that turn one section to really pull the move off. But yeah, it sucks. But I'm more pissed. I'm more angry at the Lawson one. As a fan, I'm frustrated that had to happen on the Sainz one. I'm with you there. And for Carlos Sainz, that was the end of just a pretty horrible day. His car was not being correct at all. Like, it was malfunctioning. His pit limiter broke. That's something you almost never see. Like, when was the last
is that
time?
why he kept getting the speeding penalty?
He kept getting speeding
After
penalties.
that second one happened, I was like, you got to be fucking kidding me.
He kept getting speeding penalties because he's going, guys, there's something wrong. And you watch his onboard and you see the car's like lurching, like it's going all the way down the pit lane. There's no way he could control his speed, because the second he turned the pit limiter off, then he got control of his car again. Yeah, Williams' car had brake problems, had engine issues. Carlos Sainz was just happy to be done. Like I said, he was trying to get out of the way. He was not trying to become the story that he ended up being. All right. Any other thoughts here in the back markers before we leave them?
Everything else here was fairly anonymous. I'm sure we'll talk about Fernando Alonso's rant here in a minute when we get to lap one.
Oh, like I would say, on the next day after the race, they put out the best of team radio. I'm just going to tell you, go watch that. It's 18 minutes. It's pretty good. But there is Fernando Alonso talking about all the stuff that happened on turn one. And I just refer to it as that dude was holding church and he was testifying, man. He was throwing everybody under the bus, including the stewards. And I just thought it was the funniest thing ever. So go listen to Fernando Alonso. You want to watch we were calling it like old guy testifying. There, it's right there for you. So it's great. It's great stuff. But anyway, all right, we will leave that there. We'll hop into the midfield, where there was a lot of action in the midfield. That was where this race really was, if you were watching most of it. P12 was Alex Albon in the Williams, trying to salvage some points, but unfortunately unable to do so. P11, this is one of those races where, you wonder why Yuki Tsunoda may not be in that car next year. This is probably one of them, because he had a chance at some good points, and it just didn't work out. So he only comes home in P11, and he was pissed at his team and everything else. He was just a pissed off kid in the car. P10, making the most of his opportunity to get some points, was Gabby Bortoleto in the Kick Sauber. P9 was Esteban Ocon in the Haas. P8, we will talk about why he's down here. Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari. Ran afoul of the stewards, got a 10-second penalty, and that relegated him basically down to P8. P7 was George Russell, who had one of the more interesting team radios, I think, in a long time. McLaren up his ass, I think, is one of those quotes that I'm going to have for a while. P6 was Kimi Antonelli, who got his position back. We'll talk about the George Russell, Kimi Antonelli team order thing. P5 making probably the most out of his day, but like we talked about, unable to make the final pass for P4 because of that VSC. That was Oscar Piastri in the McLaren. P4, one of the best drives, I thought, of the day. Really was on it for a podium. I really wanted to see him hang it out. I was kind of pissed when they called him into the pits for the 2-stop. I'm like, because I thought he really could have gotten a podium. Ollie Behrman with just a great drive, I think, on the day. Took the opportunities, made it count. Best finish for Haas in their existence is P4. That ties it. Matching Roman Grosjean in the, I think, 2016 Austrian Grand Prix. So it's been a while since Haas has been that far up. They almost had a podium, but that goes to the guy. Podium goes to the guy on the mega soft tire stint. A guy I thought halfway through this race, I thought this was the end, maybe. I was starting to think it, and then Max proved me wrong, man. He got on those soft tires and went to work. Max Verstappen, who passed a ton of cars on the track, finishes P3. P2, just hanging on at the end on his set of medium tires, was Charles Leclerc. But way out in the distance from that was Lando Norris in the McLaren, who takes the victory. But we got a lot to unwind. Shall we start with turn one and the mega kerfuffle?
I think you gotta. Yeah. And this had trouble written all over it from the very beginning, because heading into turn one, we managed to get 4 wide going into that, which I was like on the edge of my seat, leaning forward, screaming at my poor wife, being like, oh my God, what's going to happen here? Max is hanging it out on the outside. You have several cars go off. Max goes way, way, way off. And
Max was on the Sergio Perez line from a couple years ago. I almost expected to see
without the
that
airborne
happen again.
He managed to actually re-enter the track and further up than where he started, and ended up giving a position or two back, I think, just to try to avoid being penalized. But he goes way off. You've got so much crazy stuff that happens in those first couple turns. You've got Lewis Hamilton fighting for position. You've got Lewis Hamilton going off the track and re-entering his own way, which ended up being what cost him his good form in the race. Lewis Hamilton started in third position. We've seen Ferrari have really good fortunes in Mexico City before, in years when they were otherwise not as competitive. And I truly thought, based on where he was starting, that this could have his first Ferrari podium written all over it. The thing that really did him in, and we'll get into it in just a sec, that there was a ton of investigations that came out of this first lap by the FIA. And to the FIA's credit, we're going to give him...
The one that he gets the penalty for is actually the lap 6.
Oh, is that later on then?
Nothing of the no penalties are issued. That was what kind of led to Fernando Alonso holding church, was the fact that nobody got actually at the end of the day any penalties, because they kind of said everything kind of shook itself out. So yeah, Max is off in the grass, Leclerc's off in the grass. Lando managed to not get hit, which was my big fear going into it, but he manages to stay on the track. Piastri's off. Who else was off? Russell is off. Antonelli, like the top 5, other than maybe Lando and maybe Russell, managed to stay on the track in the actual track limits. Everybody else is in both directions, going all over the place. They're handing positions back. Leclerc actually comes out of the first turn in the lead, has to give the position back to Lando. Max is in third. Lewis Hamilton's on his outside trying to get past. Actually, at that point, he did managed to get past him. So yeah, all that stuff the stewards kind of took the position of, hey, everybody kind of gave back what we thought they should give back. No more investigation because it is turn 1, lap 1, kind of let it go. Fast forward 5 more laps, Max Verstappen is now hot on Lewis Hamilton, and it was that kerfuffle again going into turn 1 where Max dives to the inside of Hamilton. Hamilton has to go off the track to avoid him. And then when Hamilton tries to switch back going into turn 4, he's unable to stop his car. He goes off into the runoff area, and they had built this. If this is a road rescue or a rescue lane, I don't know even if a modern F1 car could stay on it because it was so thin. But he didn't take to that. The stewards actually didn't penalize him for not returning to the track correctly. What they penalized him for was because he then cuts across the grass. They deemed he gained an advantage and didn't give it back. And when they said gained an advantage in the rule book for this year, gained an advantage is an automatic 10-second penalty. Now, do I think it was a penalty by letter of the law? Yes, I do. I thought the 10 seconds, although my personal thought, I thought that was harsh. For the advantage that he gained is nowhere near 10 seconds. And it basically had put them all back into the positions that they were when they went into that turn in the first place. They both went off.
This just goes to show you how much shit went on in that first lap, because I could not keep track, even to just now. I could not keep track of where Lewis Hamilton's penalty actually came from. Now, I did realize that it came from that incident. I just thought that had happened earlier. But I honestly thought that the thing he was actually being penalized for was for not returning to the track using that.
Well, that's the other thing. There were 2 separate investigations. They did one where they said they investigated him for, and I think whoever was in the booth, Corinne Shandak, I think was mentioning it on the international broadcast, where he said, we think Hamilton could get a double penalty here. He might get the dreaded 20 seconds like Max Verstappen did last year.
That would have been too harsh.
Right. And then they cleared him of the not coming back on the road. But what they deemed was, and again, I've had to watch this a couple of times to figure it out, was that where he came back on, he didn't slow down enough once he came back on in the steward's eyes, according to the document that I read. So, yeah, I mean, to me, it was Max goes off, Lewis goes off. They both ended up in the same position. I would have called it stupid racetrack racing incident, because I've got a whole nother rant about what are we doing with this turn, because nobody can make it. If nobody can make it, why do we have it? Like, what's the point of staying on? This is also the Fernando Alonso rant, if you want to go listen to that. So yeah, there was a ton going on in the first 5 laps to try to unpack, but that's ultimately what led to Lewis's down.
Yeah, Lewis Hamilton, the only one who gets any sort of penalty, not even like you said, resulting from lap 1, turn 1, or lap 1 in general. It came later. A lot of drivers got off probably pretty easy for what happened in that first lap. Max Verstappen, during that incident, trying to get by Lewis Hamilton, he's trying to gain third from Lewis. He ends up invoking a penalty on Lewis, but he also loses a place to Oliver Behrman in that kerfuffle. Right. And at that point, we're thinking, man, Oliver Behrman's holding off. The guys behind him, he's holding off Max Verstappen. Like, he could actually be on for a podium. Now,
yeah, I don't think you could have offered it any better to Ollie Behrman. It was like the Red Sea parted and said, drive through here, please. And he did, and it was brilliant.
And based on pace at the beginning of the race, it looked like it could actually be on. Max Verstappen was pretty much the only like front running driver who started on the mediums. Everyone else was starting on the softs. And he made him last a while. He made him last 30 some laps. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact numbers there.
No, it was something like that.
30 some laps, and he was struggling on him. Turns out,
did you see the giant flat spot he had after the first turn? Like his left front looked angry.
But he struggled on those. He made him last. Now, as we saw in the second part of the race, that medium tire was just not good for anybody. I was going into this thinking, okay, it's going to be a one stop for everybody. But really, the only ones that hung it out on a one stop were Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, and Max Verstappen, our top three finishers. Max Verstappen had the benefit of taking that soft tire later on, tracks rubbered in, later on fuel, able to better capitalize on that soft tire, which we saw was actually very good and lasted a pretty long time. Unlike the mediums, we saw a lot of drivers go from the softs to the mediums, end up finding out that tire was shit, and then went for the two-stop and switched back to the soft tires, which ended up doing a lot of drivers in kind of outside of the control. That's really, I think, kind of what did Oliver Behrman in and cost him his chance at the podium. But they must have seen that medium tire was just not lasting and was not giving adequate pace, because I was surprised how many drivers actually went in for that second
So was I, because the guy that started it all was the guy in the back of all that. So the whole turn one kerfuffle actually leaves Oscar Piastri in ninth. So he has to go to work and start, he gets past a couple of guys. He gets up to, I think it was seventh at the time, and he's behind both Mercedes cars. Antonelli's in front of Russell, in front of Piastri. Piastri's in DRS, but not able to make anything happen. Even after the pit stop. So it's Piastri that gets the call to come in and box. Mercedes had switched. We'll talk about why. Russell and Antonelli. So now Antonelli is in front of Piastri, and instantly was either coming into box himself or was covering Piastri off because they heard the radio to call Oscar in. It becomes a duel of the pit crews. McLaren now, I've been listening to all of these conspiracy theories about McLaren favoring Lando Norris, and I'm going to tell you that it's complete crap. And I'll tell you why, because McLaren put in the best stop of the weekend, the best stop in like 3 races, a 2.1 second pit stop to get Piastri back in front of Antonelli, which worked. And then on those now soft tires, even though now Russell comes in, Behrman comes in, and that allows Max to get past Behrman, which I think was huge for his race because he didn't have to fight him on his way to maybe P2. When Behrman comes in, they all switch back to the soft tires. It becomes a pace race at that point. Behrman's in front. Russell is now in between him and Piastri. And Piastri eventually does the dive bomb moon going into turn one and gets past Russell. It's at that point, there's about maybe 10 laps to go. He's now trying to close in on Behrman. Verstappen, meanwhile, has done this amazing 39 lap stint on a set of C5 softs that just did not die. I'm watching his lap times. I'm like, this is insanity. Like, nobody does this. But it's Max in the zone. When he gets there, he can do this. It's amazing.
Yeah, Going into this race, I was going to be ecstatic if Max finished on the podium based on his qualifying, based on how the start of the race went, based on his pace on the medium tires. I thought, man, if he manages to get onto the podium, that's going to be like maximum damage limitation. And it ended up being that I was horribly disappointed that he didn't finish second, because holy shit, that stint on the soft tires was magic. He covered a huge amount of distance and was pretty much in DRS of Charles Leclerc when that VSC came out. Yeah. Like I said before, we were kind of robbed of a good show. because he was there. He was going to put the moves on him, and I'm sure Leclerc was going to defend with all his might. So it would have been awesome. The fact that he got there on the one stop with the softs that old was extremely impressive. I think we do have to give plenty of credit to Charles Leclerc, though, who is dragging that Ferrari to places it does not deserve to be, qualifying on the front row, finishing in second, did just enough to hold off Max Verstappen after all that time and hanging out on the one stop. So, yeah, fantastic race from the both of them. I think, I do really think that Max could have gotten second had that VSC not come out. Even still, though, third is, considering how poor he looked compared to Lando Norris going into the start of the race, like, I think third place is very good. Probably among the best exceptional. Done.
Like, when he comes out and he's on the soft tires, he's in 8th place. He's back behind Lewis Hamilton. I was shocked that Lewis didn't put up more of a fight the second time they went at it, especially after the first time. But I mean, Max was just like hot knife through butter, getting through the traffic, getting through those cars. He gets some help. Yeah, he got help from Behrman. That would have been the one thing that I was like, okay, well, if Behrman hangs it out, it was 8 seconds, I think, at the time. If you were hoping that maybe Behrman might be able to come back and if you were rooting for an Ollie Behrman podium, which I'm sure a lot of people were, that's something that he needed to pull back like 13 seconds. He pulls back 4 of them. He finishes still 9 seconds behind because Max's pace never dropped off. It just did not happen. You almost wonder, could he have run the whole race on a set of soft tires, given how good he was going on them? But yeah, I mean, beyond that, P1 is Lando way out in front, and the easiest Sunday drive he's had in a long time, to where they were covering off. If a safety car comes out, what do we do? It was really, he was fine. He was happy doing what he needed to do when he needed to do it. As a fan and a follower of his, it was like, finally, this is like, where has this been for 5 weeks now? But it's good to see. But it makes this championship, my God, is it still way up in the air? I don't know. I don't feel safe with a solitary point lead, and I certainly don't feel safe from Max Verstappen, who's 36 in arrears. But that we're one rainy Brazil race away from maybe more craziness.
Oh my gosh, yeah. You can't understate that Lando Norris had a fantastic race this weekend. He was totally dominant. You know that you're having an outstandingly dominant race when you're not getting any TV coverage.
Yep.
You saw him take the lead off the line. I went, that's it. And you didn't really see much of Lando until the very end when he won by like 30 seconds. So fantastic drive from him. Definitely one of his most dominant victories. Led every lap of the race. So yeah, great drive from Lando. Before we do move on, there was one last thing I think we should talk about, and that was the Mercedes thing with George Russell getting really, really grumpy with the team because he was behind Kimi Antonelli and felt that he had the pace to race for the podium.
And this is when they were still on the softs. This is the first stint.
Yes.
Yeah.
First stint, still on the softs. George is saying, hey, I think I've got it in me. I think I've got the pace to go fight for a podium here. I'm stuck behind Kimi. Let me by. And the team more or less told him, well, if you think you can get by Kimi, then get by Kimi. And this track, what is it?
Hermanos Rodriguez Circuit.
Autodromo, that was the word I was trying to think of. Autodromo de Hermanos Rodriguez. This track is known for being difficult to pass at, and it's also known for DRS having minimal benefit because of the air density when you're on top of a mountain. So even if you did have better pace than Kimi Antonelli, it's going to be a pain in the ass to get by. And the team kind of challenged him on it and said, if your pace is that good, go ahead, take it away from him. And he couldn't do it. And he was getting progressively more frustrated, especially once Oscar Piastri caught up to him, because then he's saying, look, guys, you're wasting my chance to get a podium. Now Oscar's on my ass. What do you want me to do here? Like, we're ruining everybody's race here. We've heard, George make this argument in the past. This time I actually thought it was pretty warranted.
Yeah.
It was pretty clear to me that he was getting slowed down by Kimi but there wasn't enough there to pass. And I don't really think that was all on George. I think that was kind of more the conditions of the circuit. So eventually later on in the race, they did do the switcheroo.
It seems like it came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, you just see swap positions, and George goes, finally.
Yeah. His case at that point was like, you know what? Fine. Like, if you let me by and I can't get the extra positions, then we'll switch back. And they did at the end of the race. They did switch back.
I loved Antonelli. Like the half second after Piastri puts the move on Russell. And the move's not even done. Antonelli's on the radio like, all right, we can swap back now. So I thought that was just hilarious. And yeah, I mean, if they had acted when George was asking the first time, maybe it's a different result. That's the thing we'll never know. But it looked like they waited too long to finally figure themselves out. I actually felt like, I'm like, my God, is he talking to the McLaren pit wall, or, what's going on there? Because it's kind of what it felt like you were looking for that decisive thing from, and George is clearly the number one at Mercedes. Like, we all know this. And it was just surprising that they took so long to figure it out.
Exactly. I thought that was very surprising that they didn't do the switch right away, because, we give George a lot of shit for griping on the radio about this and that. But honestly, he's been in that team for many years. He is by far the better performer this year. I would argue a top performer this year. And Antonelli's new to the team. He's the junior. He's been having a rough time. I would have thought it would be a no-brainer to have him swap positions. I don't know if they're trying to save some confidence in Antonelli or something, but I thought that would have been a no-brainer. And I actually think that George had a pretty good case to be pissed off this time. And, with the distance that they ended up finishing behind, I should say. Kimi finishes, what is that, about 4.5 seconds to 5 seconds behind Oscar Piastri. That could have been a little different had they let George go by at the very beginning. So, he's got his case.
Yeah, I mean, it was, like I said, I think just in terms of the different battles and everything going on, from Mexican GP, that normally, like, after the first turn, y'all like, all right, you put your feet up, we'll wait for the pit stop, maybe something happens. This was actually pretty enthralling. One of the better Mexican GPs that I can remember.
Oh, yeah.
I'm saying that with the winning margin being 30 seconds. So, I mean, that just goes to show that, people are still racing. They're racing for things, racing for important things, drivers' championship, and there's all sorts of constructor stuff. But so endeth the Mexican GP. We will, so what we're going to do now, we're going to take a quick break. We'll re-rack. We'll come back. We'll tell you where all this shook out in terms of the point standings. It's still very tight at the top. We'll look at the constructors. It is still really tight for P2. It is still really tight for P6. And somebody else just put their coins back into the machine for that P6 battle, and they're from the USA. So we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. And then we'll open it up to your thoughts on what you saw this weekend in the fan email segment. There's some great comments in here. We've got our regulars. We'll hand out some awards. We'll talk about some predictions and who got it a little bit better over the course of the weekend. And then we'll set up what may be the showdown. It always comes down to Brazil. As much as Abu Dhabi wants to have the title of the track that decides the world championship, why do I have this feeling it's going to come down to Brazil? And why do I have this sneaky feeling it's going to come down to the weather? So anyway, we will set that up. So come on back. You will not want to miss it. All right, welcome back on in. This is season 7, episode number 39 of the Outlap F1 podcast. It's our 2025 Mexico City or Mexico GP review show. You've got Andy. I'm along with Cody tonight, and we just wrapped up talking about a very eventful. Sometimes we can do the Mexico GP wrap up in about 10 minutes. This one took us a little bit longer, Mexico GP. But what did that do to all of the driver standings, and what did it do to the constructor standings? Cody, if you want to take the drivers, I will take the teams.
All right. We have a new drivers championship leader for the first time since spring, and that leader is Lando Norris in his McLaren at 357 points. He takes that lead after a dominant weekend here in Mexico. He is, however, only 1 point ahead of his teammate Oscar Piastri in the other McLaren at 356 points. Max Verstappen, still not out of it. It's a little tall order. He is, I think, 36 points behind Lando Norris now at 321 points. George Russell, still the better of the two Mercedes drivers, sitting in 4th place at 258 points. Charles Leclerc had the best weekend he's had in a while here in Mexico. He's in 5th place in the first Ferrari at 210 points. His teammate Lewis Hamilton, who could have had a much better weekend here, in 6th place in the other Ferrari at 146 points. Kimi Antonelli clocks in at 7th place, and second Mercedes at 97 points. Alex Albon, Williams in general, really had a weekend to forget here in Mexico, but Alex Albon still in 8th place for Williams at 73 points. And then we've got a little bit of a gap down to 9th place. Still, Nico Hulkenberg holding on to this spot for Kick Sauber at 41 points, and just 2 points behind him, Isaac Hadjar in 10th place for Racing Bulls at 39.
Yeah, and that P10 seed is still crazy. There's like 3 guys, there's 3 or 4 guys within a point.
Wildly close.
So we expect that to not be settled by a long shot. And as for the constructors, other than P1 McLaren, which we now know, they've already clinched it, everything else is pretty much all to play for, except for maybe P5. I think that's where Williams is going to finish. But P2, jumping up to P2 in second place is now Ferrari. They're up to 356. P3, only a single point separating P3 and P2. Mercedes check in with 355. Red Bull, not out of the P2 battle by any stretch of the imagination. They are up to 346. Williams, like I said, I'm pretty sure they're going to lock in at 111 points. Not that they may finish with more, but I think they're going to probably lock into the P5 spot there. P6 is Racing Bulls, and this is where it's anybody's guess. P6 is Racing Bulls with 72. P7 is Aston Martin with 69. P8 up 1 spot now is Haas. Hello, how you doing? Updated car, Ollie Behrman P4. Look at that. Double points day for them. That rockets them up to P8, 62 points. So they're not out of the P6 discussion now for sure. P9, they're not going anywhere either. That's Kick Sauber. They can find some points on their day too. They're up to 60 points. And P10, sadly, the House of Alpine continues. They remain still the best worst team ever, but they remain on 20 points. All right. Well, you have heard our initial thoughts on the Mexican GP. It's now time to open it up to your thoughts and your takes, and we'll react to them. We've got our regular contributors here. Cody, we shall start with Miss Rachel Fleming, who was right on the dot as she always is. We appreciate it, Rachel. And what does she got?
All right. Thank you, Rachel, for your email. And Rachel says, that was really enjoyable. I already agree right out of the gate. Unless you are Oscar Piastri or Alpine or even Carlos Sainz. Lando was in a league of his own all weekend. He absolutely dominated that race and took the lead of the World Championship, which was very well deserved. I did laugh when McLaren asked Lando about tires for Oscar because I know what I would have said, put Oscar on the wets. Love it. Ollie Behrman, what a race. I did agree that he needed to pit for a second time because he wasn't going to keep Max behind. I hate to say, though, that really shows up the second Red Bull seat even further, as at no point has Yuki this year, that really shows up the second Red Bull seat even further, as at no point has Yuki this year. Or Liam at the start of the year. Yeah, we'll get to that in just a sec. Flavio needs to be thanking his lucky stars that Gasly got those 20 points at the start of the year, nearly 30 seconds behind the next car in front. Alpine's pain is getting worse. Alonso watch. Retired. That's it. Nothing else happened except for some really entertaining radio.
Yes. Go listen to the radio, Rachel. I swear to God, you'll love it.
Yep. Several minutes, apparently, of it. Sauber watch. Nico had issues at the start, and then the car failed at the pit stop, but Gabriel got more points with an excellent overtape, but has fallen to 9th. Let's be honest, unless Alpine have another Brazil. Doubt 10th is happening. You say that, but Brazil is coming up next, so anything is possible. And then she goes on to say, though I'm not liking booing for Lando, I am genuinely confused why they are booing him. I can't see any reason why. Any ideas from you guys? I guess we can start with that last point. And that is, nobody likes an easy winner. I guess there are some fans out there, and I'll admit it, I'm a big Redditor. I see what a lot of people who maybe don't need their opinions on the internet have to say. A lot of people, I think, feel that Lando is perhaps not living up to his potential, that the McLaren was, at least for the first half of the season, by far the most dominant car, and that he was getting shown up by his teammate who has been in the sport for much less time and who is much younger than he is. I think that they were feeling that Lando was not living up to what he could live up to. And on top of that, I think a lot of fans just really want to see a really close fight to the end between Oscar and Lando and Max, and maybe we're hoping that, that would get closed up in other ways. I don't think that his booing here was deserved. He had a dominant performance. Like he deserved that win. You cannot argue it at all. Yeah. He deserved it on Saturday. He deserved it on Sunday. He made it look easy. We've seen that from many extremely talented drivers in the past on their best days having these super dominant performances. So I don't think that he deserved to be booed here. I'm a little sad that he was. And I hope that if Lando ends up winning the championship, that he will be cheered thoroughly when he does so.
Yeah, I mean, and you've read obviously some theories. I've heard there was one question in the post-race press conference that seems to indicate that a lot of it was back to the Monza decision to reinvert the cars, which was a team decision. We talked about it at the time. Would I have done it at the time? No. But at this point, it's all kind of done and done. I mean, it's already done. You can't go back and undo it. If that's what it is, I thought Lando's response to it was, the team made a decision. We did it, and you're entitled to an opinion. I've always said my stance on booing at the podium is always twofold. One, if you have paid your money, you can put your displeasure for whatever reason if you don't like somebody. You don't have to like everybody on this grid. I don't know what Lando did that people think deserved it, but if people want to boo, okay. But two, I think more as a race fan, the podium is always, first and foremost, a celebration that everybody did this dangerous thing for 2 hours on a Sunday for you guys, and nobody got hurt. That's what the podium is supposed to be the celebration for. That's why they're drinking the champagne. Like, we did this super dangerous thing. We bested death and we entertained you, and we're celebrating that. That's what it's supposed to be about. So as a race fan, I don't do that. Look, I mean, I'm not the world's biggest Max Verstappen fan. If anyone listens to this show, you've known that over the course of my time. But I still respect the guy, and I still clapped and was cheering for him on the podium at Circuit of the Americas because the guy earned it. And the guy went out and did it and did a great thing. And I was amazed at his stint on that soft tire. And had I been there, I would have cheered for that reason. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of weird internet going on. The Lewis Hamilton fan base is melting. The Oscar Piastri fan base is melting. The Lando fan base is melting. Everybody take a breath. Let's be happy that we've got a driver's title coming down to the last year of these regs. We have no idea what next year's going to look like. We could have 200 points the gap at this point next year for, could be Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin for all we know next year with Adrian Newey's genius. So who knows what next year is going to bring or future years. So let's enjoy the ride. I keep telling myself I have to enjoy this ride. So that's what I'm trying to do.
I don't really like booing in general, unless you're like a super ass. Like,
right, unless you did something in that race to maybe warrant it, but Lando didn't do anything.
Had Lance Stroll finished on the podium in Coda, I would have been astounded, but I would have cheered for him.
Yeah.
And that's coming from someone who really isn't a Lance fan. So let's leave that there. What else we got here? Yeah, Lando was definitely in a league of his own all weekend. I do like the comment about putting Oscar on the wets. That's what I would have told the team. I would have said, don't give him any tires.
It was one of the weirdest comments. I'm like, why? Again, it goes back to, I'm like, guys, what are we doing? Are you really trying to figure that out? And like, Lando had to think about it for a minute, and he goes, yeah, probably the softs. And again, the message you see on TV is highly edited. That thing lasted there was 45 seconds of dead space. Like, they asked a question and Lando just didn't do anything for 45, 50 seconds. And then he kind of came back and goes, yeah, I think probably the softs. And that's all he said.
One last point I want to touch on here, because we did go through quite a bit of already, but did touch on a point here about Yuki not showing up anything in the second Red Bull seat. We've talked about it a little bit before. And I must say there was one point in this race where I was really frustrated because Yuki was in a position where he was in front of Oscar Piastri. And I kept saying, Yuki, your job right now is you got to hold up those McLarens as best you can. And he only managed to hold up Oscar for a couple laps before Oscar made what looked like a pretty easy pass on him. And that was the point where I was very frustrated and was like, what point do you have at this point? You have one driver on your team that is in competition for the driver's championship. Whatever you've got, whatever your stake in the game is at this point, be damned. You have to help him in whatever way you can win. You have to be, if there's a driver behind you that is fighting against him for the driver's championship, you got to do everything in your power outside of wrecking them to hold them up. And I really didn't think he didn't do that. He didn't have the pace to do it. He didn't really even put up much of a defense on Oscar once Oscar made the move. And I found that to be pretty damning. So it only goes to reinforce my opinion that Yuki's seat is gone from the main Red Bull team after this season. I think he'll be lucky to get a Racing Bull seat back, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
I think he's out of the Red Bull family at the end of this season. I think it's up or out, and up hasn't worked. And, you almost want to give the Office Space treatment of, what do you say you do here? Because if it's not to be a bigger pest to Oscar Piastri in that moment, and, I don't want to go back to Abu Dhabi 2021, but that was a Sergio Perez moment of what you wanted to see, and you didn't see it here. And it is kind of damning, and he's just being outshined very much by, I think Isaac Hadjar is probably going to be the next candidate, at least the obvious next candidate. That doesn't mean that they may go outside their Red Bull bubble and try to find somebody. I mean, new management is in town, so, we don't know. But I think just also given Yuki's reaction to the team, it was very hot. He didn't feel that the team was supporting his interests at all, and maybe they weren't. And at that point, you got to kind of know what role you're in. And if you don't know by now, and you don't realize what your role should be, that's damning too. So you got to play the role that you're given, and you've had all year to try to not be in that role. And unfortunately, you're in that role. So do your thing, be the good teammate, and maybe we'll find a home for you. But you're making it really hard when, you go off on a radio rant against your own team. Maybe it's warranted, maybe it's not. I didn't really follow it hugely, but you're absolutely right, Cody. I would have expected a bigger defense or more of a comeback, or, hey, right when Oscar passes him, why didn't they box Yuki right away to get him on the better tire to see if he could come back and be a pest later on? And it just didn't happen.
Very well said. Thank you, Rachel, for your email again. Next one comes in from Dave Doherty. Thank you, Dave. And he says, well, that was a surprise to see Lando win the Grand Prix. Not if you watched Saturday. This will
like
probably
I said, after the first thing at FP3, I literally went, we got this. I was trying not to jump out of my chair, but I was like, oh, we hadn't seen that before.
Dave goes on to say, this will probably make the season championship fight interesting, as if it wasn't already interesting enough. Your thoughts on Hamilton's 10-second penalty? So we got three good points here. Maybe after recent, the fact that it's been a little while since Lando won a Grand Prix, I guess maybe you could say it was a surprise. But yeah, really, if you watched his last practice, you watched Saturday, you knew that he had a huge chance to dominate here, and he did. The championship fight was already plenty interesting, in my opinion, with Lando catching up, with Max catching up, and now it is just that much tighter. It is, in my opinion, a fantastic scenario here. We got 4 races left. We've got 2 drivers on the same team separated by a point, and one trying his damnedest to catch up. I think it's going to be a championship that comes right down to the wire. It is way more exciting than I thought this season would be. If you asked me halfway through the championship, I would have thought Oscar Piastri was going to run away with this one, and it was going to be boring. And that has not been the case. So I am thankful for that, at least. That isn't to say I wouldn't be happy if Oscar won the championship. At this point, Oscar, Lando, Max, obviously I prefer Max, but I think that all 3 of them are very deserving. So I will be happy no matter who wins the championship. But I am that much more happy that it is exciting.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of surprise that Lando won, I mean, coming into Mexico, this has been a McLaren house of horrors since it's come back to the calendar. Bad things have happened. The last 2 years have seen Lando get caught out in Q1, and then Oscar got caught out in Q1, and both of them have to try to make recovery drives. Lando, I think, went from P18 to P7, and last year Oscar kind of did the same thing. So I was not exactly looking forward. I was thinking my whole mentality going into this weekend was, for the love of God, let's just limit the damage, stay on Max's rear end. If he's going to win number 6 here because he wins here all the time, fine, let's get out of here. Let's get to Brazil where it maybe suits our car better. And then Lando finds this thing, and it was telling that Oscar didn't. I think that was the big surprise. Usually when McLaren themselves find something out about the car, it's usually both guys who kind of benefit from it. But this was really, I think, the first time where you saw the divergence of setup, where even if you threw Lando's setup on Oscar's car, he couldn't drive it. He said that very much after the race. I thought he was very reflexive, and we talked about it even at Circuit of the Americas, where Lando said, well, I just have to be I'm more comfortable being more uncomfortable with this level of grip. And Oscar kind of said the same thing. He said, I got to get my head around a different driving style and I'm contrasting that with the other 19 rounds that have worked pretty good for me, and I don't understand why I'm having to change. But if the grip level isn't the same thing, and Lando's figured out how to come to terms with whatever that grip level is, that could be something that swings. Now, I think finally, from a McLaren standpoint, they're out of the 2 races that I think they were the most afraid of in this patch, especially after the Baku mess that they made out of that weekend. I always thought COTA and I thought Mexico were always going to be really tough and more damage limitation. They go to Brazil now where they like it. The other one that I think is going to be damage limitation, and maybe it's a wild card. I have no idea what they're going to turn up with in Las Vegas, but that's usually been a track that since they've figured to reopen that up has been hard for McLaren to get around because it's cool, it's low grip, and it's dusty. 3 things that they don't genuinely like. They prefer hot, sweaty, like tire drag race.
Yeah,
but we'll see.
You don't really know, though, because you said that, you thought Mexico would be damage limitation,
right, exactly.
and Lando won by 30 seconds.
Right, exactly. Like this season, I cannot get my head around what that car does well some weekends and what that car struggles with in other weekends and I'm trying to watch as much as I can. So yeah, this was a surprise for me. Championship fight's going to be, I think, all the way down to the end. For sure, between Lando and Oscar, I think Max is going to be a factor definitely for sure. I don't see this being resolved before Abu Dhabi. My personal thought is I think it's going to come into where Lando and Oscar are going to be within 10 points of each other, and I think Max is going to be like 12 or 15 points out of it. That's my personal thought. It could be very wrong, but that's how I saw kind of the math working. We'll see.
We're going to find out in due time.
Absolutely. Yep. Oh, the 10-second penalty, I've already kind of said. I thought, yeah, it's a penalty, but I thought it was harsh. I didn't think it was deserving to ruin his race like that. And him contrast that with all the other crap that happened on the first lap, that's the only penalty that you gave out. That's what bothers me. There was enough argy-bargy going on between other guys that you either should give a lot of penalties or none at all.
I do agree with you there. If you look at the replays of exactly what happened and what they were penalizing Lewis Hamilton for, yeah, he deserves the penalty according to the rules. 10 seconds, as you said before, is definitely a bigger penalty than what he gained in that situation. So that was perhaps a little heavy-handed, but that's them's be the rules. And the fact that he got that penalty after all the nuttiness that happened on lap 1, we see a lot of a leeway given to lap 1 because it can be hairy. But this was particularly nutty for several drivers, and the fact that nothing was handed out was pretty surprising. They reviewed a lot of stuff. Like, it felt like every lap that went by there in the beginning was, okay, now they're noting this and reviewing that. And yeah, nothing really came out of it. So it was pretty surprising.
Yeah, and as much as I'm not always apt to agree with George Russell on some of his takes, I thought he came up with an interesting take, and I'll just kind of throw it out, where he suggested that maybe what would prevent some of this turn 1 absolute chaosness or lack of drivers even moderately trying to respect the track limits there is you put a gravel trap at the end of that turn. And maybe then that prevents it psychologically the go for it, because they know they've got this flat grass that really doesn't affect anything and they can come back onto the circuit. Something to think about. I don't know that I necessarily want to change the track. I think it's been that way for a very long time. I'm sure that turn is their calling card, especially in the modern F1, and I don't think the track is going to be wanting to change anything anytime soon because that's what they sell. It's something to think about. I don't know, but I thought it was an interesting idea to maybe try to modify not the turn itself, but at least some of the circumstances around it. And I know 2 drivers who would agree with that: Fernando Alonso and George Russell for sure. After those radios,
like you said, I don't want to change it too much because we kind of now we look forward to Mexico and be like, right, turn 1's going to be a load of crap, isn't it? And it's part of what makes it fun, in my opinion. Yeah. I think they should kind of just leave it as it is, and if they want to enforce the rules a little differently, go for that. But I don't think they really need to change the layout at this point in the game.
I mean, I would have preferred
see what happens with the new cars first.
Yeah, no, totally. I'm with that too, because I think you might actually see people make that corner and make it more technically correct.
Yes. Thank you again, Dave, for your email. Our last one comes in from the formula, and I like this one. It is short, it is sweet, and we do have some visual aids given to us to prove the point. The formula sends us 2 images. We've got one of Liam Lawson's onboard with the marshals very clearly on the track, right in front of him, very close, with his quote, "Are you kidding me? I could have fucking killed them," from his radio. And then we have the picture of what was actually going to be a VSC, with the marshals standing by Carlos Sainz's car, which is in the exit area with the marshals well off the racing line, just barely on the track. And Formula says, did you guys see this? I mean, seriously, what the fuck was the FIA doing this weekend? Horrible decision making. Now, after hearing what you told me about with the brakes catching on fire, the marshals needing to intervene to put out the fire, and that putting them technically on the track, which you can see them in this image that they are actually on the track. Yes, okay, I can see you want to keep people safe. That should be a virtual safety car because marshals are on the track. Now, I will concede that, despite the fact that it was a massive buzzkill. Safety is paramount.
It sucks that it has to happen that way, man. But it does.
I can agree with it now. The bigger what the fuck to me is seeing this image of two marshals on the track, literally meters in front of Liam Lawson running a race. That is astounding that was allowed to happen. There should be, we talked about this before, there should be safety measure, there should be measures and backup measures in place to keep something like this happening. From happening. And if you're having troubles with your systems, with even more backups in place, because you never want something like this to happen. You're lucky that those marshals were quick thinking and fearless and were able to get off the track without being frozen like a deer in headlights, because that could have been really bad. So I think Formula One really got lucky this weekend that something worse didn't happen. It seems to crop up fairly, maybe once a season here. It wasn't all that long ago that we were given the FIA lots of shit for having vehicles and stuff on track, safe, recovery vehicles on track in the rain where Pierre Gasly couldn't see them. And I believe that was in Japan. It wasn't that long ago, and we were given a lot of shit over that. And that was much more close to the incident that actually claimed Jules Bianchi's life. So yeah, we need the FIA to be better about this. And that's pretty much all I have to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, you hope. What I hope comes out of this is somebody either gets fined or gets fired, because you cannot have this. You can't have it. It's so wrong for so many reasons, and you think it has to take so many different circumstances to get to an answer like this, but really not much. It's really one bit of confusion, and why race direction isn't screaming or race direction isn't hitting the button for the virtual safety car right when they either didn't realize it or they found it too late. And both are failures. However that played out. End of story. And the one at the end, yeah, I mean, I get it from, I wanted to see the grandstand finish. I saw a yellow flag and I went, what the, my actual reaction was, oh, what the fuck? Because I'm like, who stopped? With one lap to go, I'm like, it could be anybody. You don't know what it is. It just says yellow flag. And then you realize where it is, and then the TV catches up to it. Yeah, from an entertainment standpoint, that sucks, but they did probably technically what was right. And yeah, it sucks that it just happened that way.
You can tell from the broadcast that they knew that there was a fuck up, because none of this was shown on the broadcast. They knew it shouldn't have happened on the broadcast. They're trying to keep it out of the eyes of as many people as possible. So they know, and hopefully that leads to some changes.
Yep. Agreed. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for your contributions, visual and in just email form. Like I said, we thoroughly enjoy reacting to your guys' takes on what you see over the course of the weekend, and we're glad that you guys continue to do it. All right, so we will turn to our awards. We will start with the rubbish. We already kind of just talked about it, so I'll just go first. I'm not going to really rant about it, but yeah, can someone explain to me how marshals on the track and one thing is in the danger zone and a complete other looking in the other? It's the same point. So we've already just talked about it, so I'm kind of done there. But Cody, what you got? I like yours.
My rubbish award is going to go to Red Bull's Saturday performance, where after a series of very, very strong performances from Max Verstappen, I think it was like a first, and a second, something like that, much stronger than earlier in the season. We've got Max Verstappen qualifying in 5th place after bringing, I think it was 4 upgrades for the car to this track. I thought they were going to be running away with it, and it certainly didn't look that way on Saturday. So they're going to get my rubbish award.
Very good. So we'll move on to analysis paralysis. I think we're kind of we're in line, but I think for different reasons. I'll go first with this one, but I'm going to give this one to the lovely FIA for just the complete lack of consistency with turn 1. And how the hell do you only, out of all of that, all the stuff we talked about, this guy going off and Leclerc's off here and Verstappen's off here and Russell's off here and Piastri's off there, one penalty out of all of that to Lewis Hamilton, who's, of all of that, I don't think really gained the advantage that they're claiming that he got. It doesn't make any sense. To me, it either is all legal and we're all just going to let that all go, fine, or you let them handle it themselves and give positions back. Okay, that's fine. Or we start handing out 5 and 10-second penalties so that stuff doesn't happen anymore in that first turn. Again, I don't know if you want it to necessarily change. I'm not necessarily advocating it to change. I'm just saying, for the love of God, be consistent. It just felt like, I get why a lot of Lewis fans are pissed about this because it feels very inconsistent, and this is the same thing we always get frustrated about. Cody, what you got?
I agree with you there. My analysis paralysis is also going to go to the FIA. In a more general sense, it is partly for all of the F1 turn one shenanigans that resulted in no penalties, giving Lewis Hamilton a penalty that was heavy-handed for what was done. The stuff with Liam Lawson, almost killing marshals, the stuff with a VSE being called for much lesser danger at the end of the race when the action was reaching its peak. Yeah, definitely a lot of really weird, wacky, questionable decisions made by the FIA this weekend. And in a championship that is coming down to the wire, we don't want any more controversy.
Yes.
Please.
Oh, dear Lord.
Just let it end in a good way where
Please, dear
nothing
Lord.
weird happens and we don't have to talk about it for 5 years.
Right. All I want, here's really all I want. Like, whoever wins this thing, I want it to be definitive. I want it to be over with when the checkered flag falls. I do not want another 8 hours of waiting for social media posts to update themselves, waiting for a steward's decision. I can't do that again. My heart, and that time I didn't have a real dog in the fight. Like, I was a Lewis backer of the 2021 thing, but with this, with 2 of my guys in it, oh my God, Cody, you're going to have to give me oxygen or something. Like, I'm going to go lay down now and then tell me how it ends because I can't do it. So whatever this is, for the love of God, the FIA, stay the F out of this, please. Anyway, moving on to Dark Horse. I think this is a consensus here. Oliver Behrman, who, like I said, it opened up like the parting of the Red Sea and said, drive through me, please. And he did. And it was amazing. And it's Haas car doing well. Haas car with upgrades that I think nobody thought about even at Circuit of the Americas because it wasn't that great of a track for them, but proving to work really well here. They're not out of the P6 battle now by any stretch. We got 4 teams in there that could easily change positions by the end of the season. Good to see Haas fighting back. Oliver Behrman being the standard bearer. I think that you're a year or 2 away. That guy's going to be the obvious number 1 at that team if he stays there. If he doesn't have bigger aspirations, which he very well might.
Agreed. Ollie the Bear, Behrman, definitely the dark horse this weekend, matching Haas's best Formula One finishing position, giving us dreams of a Haas podium that just didn't quite materialize. But despite missing out on the podium, he sounded ecstatic after the race with his performance. I think he should be. It was fantastic. And I agree. You know, it's not long, probably one Lewis retirement, a literal retirement away from being in that Ferrari seat fighting against Charles Leclerc. And I think he will do very well once he gets there. Yeah.
The future looks very, very bright. I mean, he's showing the flashpoints. So when you want a young driver and you look at a young driver, there's a lot of, meh that you have to get through sometimes in a rookie season. And he's had some meh races. He's had some moments where you just go, what the hell was that, dude? But there's also moments like this. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for those flashpoints. It's like when Leclerc was suddenly like P5 in Brazil in the rain. And you're like, where the hell did that come from? Mm-hmm. That's the mark of a driver who looks like he's got his stuff together. And I think his future looks very, very, very bright. So Ollie Behrman, kudos on the Dark Horse Award this weekend. We'll move into Driver of the Day. I know it's boring. I know it's an easy call, but Lando Norris came out and found it and figured it out when he needed to in the worst way possible. It stems the bleeding for now. We'll see where else it goes from here, but it was good to see. This is the good side of the Lando coin and what he can do when he puts it all together, and he was flawless this weekend. I can't say it any other way than that. So Lando Norris, my driver of the day. Cody, what you got?
Yep, so we're in agreement for 3 out of 4 of our awards here. Driver of the day, it's got to be Lando. Looked in control of it pretty much most of the weekend, at least in all the competitive sessions. Ran away with it on Sunday, took the lead off the line. And I was telling my wife, that's something Lando's not exactly known for. And he made quick work of it on Sunday, getting off the line, taking the lead, never looked back, finishing way out in front of the competition. You can't argue that is the performance of a champion. So we'll just have to see if he gets there.
Yeah. Like it's all to play for sure. All right. So we'll move into our predictions results. All right, Cody, you got 2 points on the weekend. You did get the fastest quality time, but I will have to say your fastest quality time was dead on, man. 1:15.5. You're only off by like a couple of hundredths. So kudos to you on that prediction. I saw that and I went, damn. You're right on it, dude. And you got P2 on the podium because you predicted Charles Leclerc to get there. I got a slightly better result this weekend. I finished with 3 points. I got the pole sitter because I had Lando at the fastest lap time. Because I predicted I was homeboy this weekend and had Lando winning the race. That ended up proves to be what gives me the slim 3-2 victory. I do believe I have now clinched this year's version of our game.
I'll give you a little golf clap.
11-6. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, congratulations. I can sometimes pick things, but I've been shut out twice, so who knows what that means. But anyway, we will continue the game. We're still going to do predictions because I think it's fun and it gives us something to watch and trash talk each other over the course of the weekend. So we will continue to do it for sure. And maybe you make it 11-10 by the end of this. Who knows? But anyway, so endeth again the Mexican GP. We got 4 races to go. We'll have sprints in them. Brazil up next. Like I said before, it always seems to come back to this track. It is the crowner of champions and the taker away of championship runs. Lewis Hamilton can vouch for that on both ends. Kimi Räikkönen can vouch for it. Lando Norris can say that this was the race where his championship run really ended last year. So, a lot to play for in 2 weeks' time. We will come back with a preview. We will get you all set with whatever the latest news is, whatever the latest scuttlebutt is, who's bringing upgrades, what we know, when do we know it type of thing. We'll do that. And we're going to be all throughout those sessions because it's good timing because it's like late morning, early afternoon. So it fits right into the schedule. Perfect for us. So we will be all over the Brazilian Grand Prix weekend. It's a great track. Gabby Bortoleto coming home for the first time to race in front of his fans is going to have a following for sure. So Kick Sauber, Rachel Fleming, do the Sauber watch because that's going to be a thing this weekend for sure. And we have no idea what the weather's going to be. I've not even looked at it. I'm kind of scared to, but I will not look at that till like the next
It's
weekend.
2 weeks out. It could be anything.
Yeah, exactly. Could be anything. Could be hurricane, could be sunny and dry. I don't know. Could be both. But anyway, Cody, any final thoughts before we hop on out?
Just that I love the Brazilian Grand Prix. It is iconic. It is always exciting. There's always something to play for at this point in the season, and there's always weather here. And I think that the 2024 Brazilian Grand Prix will always stay with me as one of Max Verstappen's best and most exciting performances. And I'm hoping so strongly that we see another performance like that from him in this Brazilian Grand Prix to keep hope alive. But I think it'll be good no matter what.
Yeah, should be good. Does it get closer? Does it get farther away? For some, we will be here to catch it all. So again, until next Wednesday, take care of yourselves out there. And as always, may all your laps be fast.